Welcome to Pillow Tales, where every story is a soft escape into peaceful dreams. My name is Christopher and I'm so glad you're here, ready to unwind and let the world melt away. So, find a cozy spot, wrap yourself in comfort, and let the soothing sounds and gentle words guide you into a night of sweet, peaceful dreams. It was one of those nights when the world outside seemed to dissolve into the rhythmic patter of raindrops. The air was thick with the scent of wet earth and damp leaves, and the rain fell with a hypnotic steadiness that drowned out the city's usual noises. The streets lay silent and empty, save for the occasional ripple of water pooling in the cracks of cobblestones, reflecting the dim glow of the streetlights above. Inside a small, dimly lit apartment, the warmth of the fire crackling in the hearth contrasted with the cold outside. The golden light from the flames flickered lazily across the walls, casting shifting shadows that danced along the edges of the room. The space was cozy, with worn leather armchairs and the comforting smell of tea brewing, wrapping the air in an earthy sweetness. Amelia sat curled up by the window, gazing out into the storm. Her fingertips traced the condensation on the glass, drawing absent patterns as the rain cascaded down in rivulets. She had always loved nights like this, quiet, isolating, yet somehow intimate. The storm had a way of making everything feel smaller, more contained, as if the outside world didn't exist beyond the reach of the rain. But tonight, there was something different in the air. Something heavier, something that felt almost expectant, like the world was waiting for something to happen. She sipped from her mug, feeling the warmth of the tea slide down her throat, soothing her from the inside out. Her thoughts drifted back to another rainy night, years ago, when she had met him. It had been raining just like this. Heavy, relentless, with the sound of water hitting the pavement so loud it was like a constant hum in her ears. She had been walking home from her shift at the cafe, her umbrella doing little to protect her from the downpour. The city was eerily quiet, as if the rain had chased everyone indoors, leaving her alone to navigate the empty streets. As she turned the corner onto her street, she saw him for the first time. He stood under the awning of a small, dimly lit bookshop, his coat pulled tight around him. His face was tilted up toward the rain, his eyes closed, as if he was letting the water cleanse him of something unseen. Amelia hesitated, caught off guard by the stillness of him. He didn't look like someone trying to escape the storm. He looked as though he welcomed it, as if the rain was an old friend he had been waiting for. Her curiosity piqued, and before she could talk herself out of it, she found herself walking toward him. "You must like the rain," she said, her voice low, uncertain whether she was intruding. He opened his eyes slowly, meeting her gaze. For a moment, he said nothing, just looked at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. But then, a small smile played at the corner of his lips. "I do," he said. "It's calming." There was something in his voice, something that made the hairs on the back of her neck stand up. It wasn't fear, but rather an odd sense of familiarity, as if she had known him before this moment. She smiled back, nodding in agreement. "Me too. It's like the world pauses for a while, and everything else fades away." He chuckled softly, the sound almost lost beneath the rain's relentless rhythm. "Exactly." For a while, they stood there together, the silence between them filled only by the sound of the rain. It wasn't an awkward silence, but a comfortable one, as though they had nothing more to say, nothing more to add to the quiet harmony of the storm. After a while, he glanced over at the bookshop. "Would you like to come inside?" he asked. "It's warm in there, and the rain doesn't seem to be stopping anytime soon." Amelia hesitated, unsure whether to accept the invitation of a stranger. But something in his eyes, calm, steady, made her feel at ease. She nodded, and they both stepped into the warmth of the bookshop. The bell above the door chimed softly as they entered. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of old books and leather bindings, the musty scent both comforting and nostalgic. The shop was small, but it was packed from floor to ceiling with shelves upon shelves of books, every inch of space crammed with stories waiting to be discovered. It was the kind of place Amelia could have easily spent hours in, lost among the pages. He led her toward the back of the shop, where a small seating area was tucked away in a cozy nook near the fireplace. 2 armchairs, their leather worn and cracked with age, sat facing the fire, and a small table between them held an old kettle and 2 mismatched teacups. The scene was intimate, inviting, as though it had been waiting for them. "Do you come here often?" Amelia asked, settling into one of the armchairs as he poured the tea. "Sometimes," he said, handing her a cup before sitting across from her. "It's quiet here. The owner doesn't mind if I sit for hours, reading or just thinking." Amelia took a sip of the tea. It was bitter, but comforting. There was something in the way he spoke, a heaviness beneath his words, as though there was more to the story than he was letting on. She wanted to ask him more, to learn why he seemed so familiar, why the rain seemed to hold a deeper meaning for him. But she hesitated, unsure if she wanted to push beyond the comfortable surface they had settled into. Instead, they talked about books, about the rain, about the little things that brought them joy. The conversation flowed easily, like the rain outside, unhurried and peaceful. There was a warmth between them, something unspoken but undeniable. As the hours passed, the storm outside seemed to lessen, the heavy downpour giving way to a softer, gentler rain. The memory of that night had lingered with Amelia for years, like a shadow just out of reach. She had returned to the bookshop many times, hoping to find him again, to recapture that strange connection they had shared. But he was never there, and no one at the shop remembered him. It was as though he had been a figment of her imagination, conjured by the rain and the stillness of that night. And yet, she couldn't shake the feeling that their meeting had been important. That it had meant something more than a chance encounter. As the years went by, she found herself thinking of him often, especially on nights like this, when the rain fell heavy and the world outside felt distant. Amelia stood from her chair, wrapping the blanket around her shoulders as she wandered over to the window. The rain was still falling, though more gently now, a soft, rhythmic patter against the glass. She pressed her forehead to the cool pane, her breath fogging the window as she stared out into the night. A figure stood across the street, barely visible through the curtain of rain. Her heart skipped a beat, her mind racing back to that night years ago. Could it be him? After all this time? She wiped the condensation from the window, squinting into the darkness. The figure stood still, just as he had before, facing the sky with his head tilted up toward the rain. Her breath caught in her throat. It was him. It had to be. Without thinking, she grabbed her coat and rushed outside, the rain immediately soaking through her clothes as she crossed the street. She called out to him, her voice shaky, unsure, "Is it you?" He didn't answer, didn't even look at her. For a moment, she thought she had been mistaken, that it wasn't him at all. But then, slowly, he lowered his gaze, meeting hers with the same calm, steady eyes she had remembered. A small, knowing smile tugged at his lips. "Amelia," he said, his voice barely a whisper beneath the rain. Her heart pounded in her chest. "How do you know my name?" "I never forgot," he said softly. "I've been waiting." A shiver ran down her spine, not from the cold, but from the weight of his words. "Waiting? For her? Who are you?" she asked, her voice trembling. He took a step closer, his presence almost overwhelming in its intensity. "I'm the part of you that remembers," he said, his voice soft but firm. "The part of you that knows the truth." Amelia felt her knees weaken, her mind spinning with questions. But before she could say another word, he reached out, his hand brushing gently against her cheek. "The rain brought us together once," he whispered. "And it will bring us together again." And just like that, he was gone, dissolving into the rain, leaving only the faint echo of his words behind. Back inside, Amelia stood by the window, staring out into the night, the rain still falling in soft, steady rhythms. The fire crackled softly behind her, but she felt cold, unsettled. She wrapped the blanket tighter around her shoulders, her mind racing. Who was he? And what did he mean by the truth? The rain tapped against the window, a soft, persistent reminder of that night, of the mystery that still lingered in the air. She didn't have answers, not yet. But deep down, she knew that the rain wasn't finished with her. That whatever had begun that night in the bookshop had only just begun. And as she sank back into her chair, the warmth of the fire enveloping her once more, she couldn't help but wonder what the rain had in store for her next. As the story ends, let the calm of the night and the soothing rhythm of the rain carry you into a peaceful, restful sleep. Until next time, sweet dreams.